Alabama just had its second and final scrimmage of fall camp on Saturday, and quarterback Ty Simpson had a much more encouraging performance than a lot of fans realize. Let's talk about it. What is up, everybody? Clint Lamb with A to Z Sports and Cover Crimson. So Alabama just finished up its second and final scrimmage of fall camp. Obviously, there's a lot going on as far as preparing for Florida State, trying to figure out some of these position battles, trying to get some nuggets as far as who's doing well, who's maybe not doing so well. But one of the things that I want to talk about that came out of this scrimmage that I don't think we're talking about enough is the performance of Ty Simpson. But before we get into how he did in the second scrimmage, I want to focus and talk about what he did and what Alabama's offense did in the first scrimmage, and that was the explosive plays downfield. Offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb, he talked about this in his press conference after the first scrimmage, where he said, we were able to hit our explosive play number in the scrimmage, and he had actually talked about how they had hit that explosive play number in several practices in a row. It's kind of been a theme of fall camp for Alabama's offense. But in this second scrimmage, you didn't see the explosive plays, or you certainly didn't see the same amount or the same number as you did in the first scrimmage, and maybe what you had seen in a lot of these practices if you were able to attend. And for some reason, that has fans concerned. You know, it's one scrimmage, it's one quote-unquote practice, and fans are concerned at the fact that Ty Simpson and Alabama's offense didn't really have the number of explosive plays that they had in previous scrimmages or practices. But I want you to think about something. First of all, Ty Simpson was extremely efficient in this second scrimmage. He went 14 of 16 with the only two incompletions being drops, one by Jalen Hill, one by Cole Adams. And so as far as the completion percentage and being able to distribute the football to his playmakers, he did a phenomenal job. But from Alabama's defense's perspective, you have to think about this. They had been allowing explosive plays at a pretty high rate all throughout fall camp. And granted, I think a lot of that is just the offense that they were going against, but also you have to think from Kane Womack and the defense's perspective, that was a point of emphasis heading into the scrimmage on Saturday. Don't get beat deep, don't allow the explosive plays, and Alabama's defense is good enough where they were able to manage those. But I think the most encouraging part about that development was how Ty Simpson, despite the fact that he's now officially been named Alabama's starting quarterback, there's a little bit more rope, a little bit more leeway. He didn't feel forced to take shots or chances downfield if it wasn't there. He was a lot more willing to take what the defense gave him, which was more of the short to intermediate stuff, and he trusted his playmakers to be able to get the yardage needed, to be able to consistently move the football downfield. And from everything that we heard, that's exactly what happened. And for being such a young player, and what I mean by young is not in age, but in experience, that's pretty surprising to hear. So now we know that Alabama's offense with Ty Simpson as its starting quarterback, or as its quarterback at least, it can push the football downfield at a pretty high success rate. It can also take what the defense gives it. But we also know that Ty Simpson was willing to use his legs a lot more in this second scrimmage. Now, he's always been willing to use his legs. It's one of the key elements of his game, and I don't think people talk about that enough either. But in this particular scrimmage, he had a long 25-plus yard touchdown run, which really set the offense up competing against the defense. But with Ty Simpson, his legs and his ability to kind of lull defenses to sleep with his legs, I think is going to be a critical component to Alabama's offense. You got to think, if you're able to distribute the football both to the intermediate parts of the field and also go vertical, you've got a run game, a traditional run game that you're having success with. And even though Jam Miller got hurt, I do think Alabama's going to continue to be able to run the football effectively. But then also the defense is trying to take all these various things into account, and it's straining them enough already. But then now you've got to add the +1 to the run game, which is something that, you know, Alabama definitely had that with Jalen Milroe, and it's actually one of the things that made Alabama's offense difficult to defend against certain teams last season. But also bringing that element with Ty Simpson, not to the extent of Jalen Milroe, and certainly not going to be a volume runner to the extent that Jalen Milroe was, but just having that element and being able to not only extend plays, but be able to use your legs to create yardage and first downs and touchdowns. That is another element that opposing defenses are going to have to take into account when defending Alabama, and I think that's going to make them all the more lethal. So I'm excited to see what Ty Simpson's able to do now that he's been named the starter, but the first box that he needed to check, he certainly answered that call in a major way.